Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our Millennial Mom segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames, we are featuring the amazing Lindsey Graham, political activist, author, and host of the very famous Patriot Barbie Podcast. Quite the clever and catchy name. She is outspoken, sassy, and downright honest. Today, we're chatting LGBTQ, the Biden administration, and why Republicans are proposing a bill barring lessons on gender and sexuality for children. Do you want your children being taught non-binary? LGBTQ ideologies being pushed on them when life is confusing enough as it is? Heck no. President Joe Biden reportedly invited Dylan Mulvaney, a grown man who recently started identifying as a little girl, to sit with him for an interview at the White House last month. The vlog, recorded on Dylan's 66th day of quote-unquote girlhood, features the man wearing high heels and a sports bra while frolicking in a forest. Now, this image has gained significant attention in recent weeks. Dylan's TikTok includes footage taken on White House grounds and inside the Oval Office. In the interview, President Biden condemned states for restricting sex change procedures on children. Now, you would think that the president of the United States would have something better to do with his time than sit down with a man who believes he's a prepubescent girl in an attempt to promote his identity crisis. Well, scores of women, including myself, have accused Dylan Mulvaney of appropriating femininity and making a mockery out of womanhood. The left's gender ideology agenda just keeps getting stranger and stranger by the day. And in other news, Republican legislators have proposed a far-reaching new law that would prohibit public schools from offering young students lessons or literature that discusses gender identity, sexual orientation, and transgender individuals. Now, the legislation introduced in Congress by a group of 33 House Republicans led by Rep. Mike Johnson is called the Stop the Sexualization of Children Act. It would prohibit the use of federal funding to develop, implement, or fund any sexually oriented program, event, or literature for children under the age of 10. We're talking about babies, guys. Now, I'm all for this. And here to chat some more is supermama and political activist Lindsey Graham, the Patriot Barbie. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Oh, thank you so much. I just love everything you're saying. And I'm sitting here getting fired up just hearing about Dylan Mulvaney and his I'm a female act and the sexualization of our kids. Like, these are hot topics right now. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you on. You're definitely outspoken. I love your handle, the Patriot Barbie. That's incredible. Great name. After coming into notoriety for refusing to comply with the state of Oregon's draconian COVID-19 lockdown, you were basically catapulted into the national spotlight and branded the Patriot Barbie by the leftists. You claim you are a public speaker, an activist, a political advocate for conservatives and Christians across the nation. Lindsey, what is going on in America?
Oh my gosh, what isn't going on in America? To start, honestly, the situation with our kids is so out of control. And I didn't consider myself a political activist 2 years ago. Of course, I wasn't even in politics. And I don't even consider this a political issue. This is a social and culture issue. And the attack on our children and then the attack on femininity has just reached such a ridiculous high. Where do we even start? Let's start with Dylan Mulvaney. The idea that, you can slap on some lipstick and a pair of high heels and tape your boobs down and tuck your genitalia and say that you're a woman and claim womanhood is so asinine. It's so insulting. And, of course, I'm not an easily offended person, but this is offensive. It's offensive to all women. And it's appalling that what we do and what, the beautiful blessings that God gave us in life to be able to bear children, birth those children, feed those children from our body, and everything that our body does when you start puberty leading up to that is something that no man can, put on a red dress and talk in a high voice and experience. And I think that the attack on femininity needs to be addressed, like at the forefront of this culture war.
Yeah, amen, sister. You said it. Now, Dylan Mulvaney opened the interview with President Biden by saying, "Mr. President, this is my 221st day of publicly transitioning," to which Biden's response was, "God love you." Now, Mulvaney asked Biden if he thought states should be allowed to ban gender affirming healthcare, such as puberty blockers and irreversible sex change surgeries. And in reply, President Biden declared, "I don't think that any state or anybody should have the right to do that as a moral question. As a legal question, I just think it's wrong." What do you say to this, Lindsey?
Oh gosh. I say that it's insane that we're talking about little children, okay, and the parental rights of little children at 5, 6. As a woman, even at 18, you're uncomfortable in your body. You don't know what's happening when you're going through puberty. You don't know who you are. This is why the voting age is 18. This is why gun rights are in the 18. This is drinking ages are at 21, because at a young age, you don't have the capacity to make these decisions. And so it's not about, we don't ever want you to have that opportunity. Of course, I disagree that a man can ever be a woman and vice versa, but especially in little children, they're not in any mental capacity to make these decisions. So by taking over parental rights, and that's the biggest concern here, is that I do have authority over my children to say, hey, you're my child. I know that you're not mature enough to decide that you want to change your gender, which I don't agree with is possible anyway. But now the government saying we're going to step on the parents' toes and say, hey, we're going to stop you from doing what's best for your child, because every parent knows what's best for their own child. They live in that home. They raised that child. The government saying you don't have authority anymore. We're going to ban you from doing what's right for your child. That's a terrifying place to be in America.
I agree. And there's a huge divide, Lindsey. So multiple states across the country have restricted or are considering laws to restrict access to sex transition procedures on children, including puberty blockers and hormone therapies and irreversible and risky sex change surgeries. But of course, they're met with a lot of protests. Now, the legislation that we're talking about, introduced in Congress by a group of 33 House Republicans, is called the Stop the Sexualization of Children's Act. Now, the bill says parents can sue school districts in federal court for violating the law, and it threatens disobedient school districts with the loss of federal, state, and even local funding for up to 3 years. It's the latest in a wave of hundreds of laws proposed over the past 3 years that similarly aim to restrict what children can learn and do at schools as part of the education culture wars. Do you support this bill?
I 100% support it. It's even beyond schools. We've got the Department of Defense funding drag shows for little kids on the military bases. The Department of Defense is built and structured to defend our country, not propagate sexual acts to the military children. So I absolutely support this. In fact, our representative here in Arizona co-sponsored the bill, Debbie Lesko, which I'm very, very proud of. And this is absolutely something that needs to pass. There is absolutely no reason for any federal funds to be propagating sexual activity in children. So yes, I support this bill 100%. I hope it passes. I'll do everything I can to support this bill. And I do encourage parents to utilize this bill once it passes and to take action against school systems that are bringing sex education into schools. I don't think sex education should even be in schools to begin with. And so when they double down on that with gender identity and gender fluidity and the queer theory and drag shows in schools, I think that's past the moment when parents need to say, yep, time to start filing some lawsuits.
There you go. Lindsey, many are touting the bill is a necessary step to fight back against the liberal program for public schools, echoing increasing popular allegations from the right that LGBTQ teachers in public schools are, quote unquote, grooming children for sexual abuse. And the Democrat Party and their cultural allies are on a crusade to immerse young children in sexual imagery and radical gender ideology at school and in public. In your opinion, are these claims baseless?
I think it's very much gone too far. And I disagree with the statement that specifically any teacher that is LGBTQ is indoctrinating the kids. I disagree with that. There's a rising number of gay people in America standing up against this. And what they're saying is being gay is an adult choice. We've made that choice as an adult. We live a gay lifestyle. However, it should not be taught to our children. And so Gays Against Groomers, for example, is saying, hey, do not bring this in under the umbrella of the LGBTQ. This is not a gay thing. However, I do agree, again, that sexuality, your sexual preference, who you choose to have sex with, shouldn't be a conversation, straight or gay, in any school system. I think that kids are smart enough to figure out, okay, well, I can tell that, my mommy is married to my daddy. And maybe teacher doesn't talk about who they're married to, but what is so hard about an adult saying to a child, you know what, that's a personal issue and we're not going to discuss that at school. It's that simple. That's my personal life. We don't discuss our personal lives at school. I now remember having a gay 6th grade teacher. She never spoke about who she was married to or living with. And there was nothing wrong with that. There was no loss in my life not knowing the sexuality of my 6th grade teacher.
Our young children should be learning about, in my opinion, reading, writing, math, elementary school, not radical gender theory or the finer points of drag culture, to your point.
No, there's still an agenda. I agree that there's very much a democratic agenda. There are books being found in school libraries that are pornographic. There is no way around it. They are images, cartoon characters depicting sexual acts. This is not a rumor. These are books being sent to me on a daily basis from moms who have said, I walked into my child's school. This is the book I found. Not only that, this is the letter that went home with my child saying, we encourage your child to read these books. And one of them has pornographic images in them. So, and these are in public libraries now too. So it's in the schools, it's in our public schools, it's in our public systems. There is an agenda to teach sexualization to kids. And I will say this, Republicans are not pushing it. Republicans are fighting it. So that leaves you with one fact. Democrats are.
Rep. Pramila Jayapal tweeted that the bill is hateful and that she will fight the measure as the proud mom of an incredible trans kid. And the president of the American Federation of Teachers wrote in an email that the bill resembles the 2021 Florida law banning education on gender identity and sexual orientation for children in kindergarten through 3rd grade and limiting lessons on those topics for higher grades, saying this kind of legislation harms the most vulnerable kids for cheap political gain. What is your reaction to her comment?
I say that it's very ironic that before 2022, we didn't have an influx of 5-year-olds suddenly confused about their gender ever in the history of ever. So ask yourself, why are you so adamant to be teaching gender fluidity to 5-year-olds? This would be a different conversation if we were even talking about 13 or 15 or 18-year-olds. I won't even go there. That's a whole nother conversation. I disagree with that. But we are talking about kindergarten, elementary school children. So why is it hateful to say, hey, you know what? I've got a 6-year-old. I've got an 8-year-old. We do not talk about sex, and they don't know about sex. So why is it that they're so adamant to
push it? You're right. To your point, interestingly enough, Drag Story Hour, it was founded back in 2015 in San Francisco. It's a national program that invites drag queens into libraries to read books aloud to children. Practice advocates say affords LGBTQ children greater representation and allows all students to learn about diverse lives and beliefs. These family-friendly drag events, quote unquote, sometimes hosted in libraries, Lindsey, including school libraries, have in recent months drawn escalating protests from conservatives and politicians. What do you say to this? Would you allow your child to be read to out loud by a drag queen?
I think that, first of all, it shouldn't be happening in the school systems because this should be a parental decision. Everything goes back to parents have authority over their children. So my question is, if I want my child to be accepting and diverse, I can invite a drag queen into my home and I can hire him to read to my child. The school is using those funds and using our tax dollars on our time to bring the grown men dressed as women, which is a mental concern. You're putting those people in front of kids and you're putting our children in harm's way. If we want to talk about diversity and inclusion, it is my job to decide what my child is exposed to. And the more the schools do this, the more inclined parents are going to be to pull their children.
There you go. Well, you said it. We are out of time. Thank you so much for an incredible, insightful interview. I love your perspective on things, and I'll definitely have you come back on.
Thank you, Zen. Thanks for having me.
Definitely an interesting perspective. Lindsey Graham, what an incredible voice. That was our Millennial Mom segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames. Check her out on the gram at the.patriot.barbie, or you could head directly to her website, patriotbarbie.com. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.